For 36 minutes, the Jazz played right with the best in the West. And then the fourth quarter was all Chet Holmgren and the Thunder as the Jazz fall in Oklahoma. We're talking about POSTCAST and a spur the Jazz got from the bench tonight. Here, next on POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, the most recent memory will be a Thunder surge to open the fourth quarter, and they roared to the fourth quarter win, 37-27. The Jazz had cut it to 92-90 or 82-80 going into the fourth quarter, and the Thunder just blasted them to open up the fourth quarter. Transition, all the things Thunder do, forced some turnovers, got out and run, made some shots. Chet Holmgren, the rookie, was dominant. He's the piece that changed the story of who the Thunder are this year. But for the night, it's an interesting night. The Jazz got blasted early down. The starters really just did not have any juice. They didn't play particularly. They didn't seem to be playing. It's hard to say they didn't play hard. But it didn't feel like they were playing with a lot of juice. Let's just put it that way. They didn't really look that way to open the third quarter either, frankly. And the Jazz got outrun 22-11 to start. And then Johnny Juzang comes in, hits a bunch of three. Colin Sexton makes some plays. Walker Kessler's off the bench. And the Jazz completely changed the way they were playing, Ron, and played much better basketball and got themselves back into the game.
I thought the speed and the fact that they got into their offense very early, pushing the basketball up the floor, some movement. Johnny, as you do, three-point field goals in that second quarter, and that just snowballed. And they started to play very well, outscoring the Thunder in that second quarter anyway, 29-22. But I thought it was the fact that they were pushing the ball up the floor and got the offense going.
And the third quarter was really very similar. Our starters just didn't have a lot of juice, and then Colin Sexton makes the first substitution in. He's been just fabulous off the bench. And then from there, the Jazz, they kind of picked it up. Wasn't as universal, wasn't clear. Like Will pulled four guys at about the 7.5 minutes into the first quarter. It was like, okay, that's enough. This wasn't quite as dramatic, but I mean, it's pretty dramatic. You look at the plus minuses tonight for the Jazz players. The main starters, Hendricks minus 22 in 24 minutes, John Collins minus 23 in 22 minutes, Keontae minus 23 in 28 minutes, Chris Dunn minus 15. The bench players, Colin plays a little bit with those guys, but Taylor Horton-Tucker in 15 minutes is plus 4. Micah Potter's plus 3, I think it is. Or maybe Johnny Juzang was plus 3. Micah's minus 1. Jazz bench players are what kept them in this ball game and kept them going.
Yeah, it really was. And I think Will noticed that as well because he wasn't afraid to, pull those starters out and put those guys back in there. In that third quarter, they ended up playing very well. They only got outscored 29-26 in that third quarter, but they were down early in that third quarter, and then the bench had to bring them back to within 2.
So, Ron, you opened the broadcast tonight saying, I want to watch the following. You always do. If you ever tune in the first thing in the broadcast, Ron always says, well, tonight was on-ball defense. In the first quarter, the Jazz allowed 14 points at the rim. In the second quarter, they only allowed 4. What did they do better as the night went on with the on-ball and overall defense tonight until the fourth quarter?
Well, anytime you're keeping teams from scoring in the paint and forcing teams to shoot uncomfortable shots, if you want to call it that, then I think on-ball defense is good, especially if you're staying in front. And I'm sure things like that is what Will look at, is being able to stay in front of your man, double team, and following the game plan. He was talking to me about that, and he mentioned, there's a game plan that they try to put together. And when you have guys out there on the floor, you want them to follow the game plan. And a lot of that offense now spills into some very good offense, and all of a sudden you got something going.
So when you look at the Jazz defensively, Ron, let's go to this because this is a big thing they're working. We're going to shoot around every day. They're working defense, and this is as tough a task. And Shea, you got as tough a task coming up in Luka. We see some sparks, like I see Taylor Hendricks with the blocks and those kind, but it's the fundamental stuff that they're looking for. So what are the things that you're going to look at tomorrow night, or that you're going to look at for the next? You said, like, you opened the broadcast and I said, for the next 14 games, I'm watching the same thing to open every game.
See if guys are improving at what Will wants them to do, and that's on-ball defense, which means you're trying to keep guys in front of you, and if you're forcing them to a double team, making sure you do that, and switch out of things like that. You just want to be solid out there on the floor and make the opponents uncomfortable, make them shoot uncomfortable shots. make them work late in the clock. I mean, all of those type of things lead to some very good defensive efforts.
Well, there's no question that there's a highlight of what's going on with the Jazz right now, and that's Colin Sexton.
Yeah, offensively for sure.
What do you see? He's playing off the bench. He's playing these incredibly long, extended minutes in the ball game right now. It's crazy for him to play 18 straight minutes, but he's doing it. He doesn't get tired, Will says. It allows him to play in a rhythm, allows him to score. He's running the pick and roll. He's finding guys. He just looks like he's completely in control of the game when he's out there.
So if you think about the starting lineup and what they were able to do here tonight, wasn't very good until they made some substitutions. That energy level that Colin comes in and plays with is something that Will talked about. He has that energy that he comes in and he makes some things happen. That's the Jordan Clarkson role that played about 2 or 3 years ago when he got 6th Man of the Year. That's what you're seeing out of Jordan Clarkson. I mean, out of Sexton right now.
And honestly, I see it exact same role. I see it as a totally different player. One, he's efficient every night. He's not like part of what Jordan's brilliance when he was at his heyday was if he got hot, we won. If he lost, we could just overcome it. This year, if Jordan gets hot, we have a chance to win. If he's cold, we lose. Like the numbers are dramatic. If Jordan shoots under about 40%, I think we're like 4-24 when he does that. Like it's brutal. So because this team's dependent on him. Collins one I would feel pretty comfortable depending on every night because he's so consistently efficient night in, night out. Tonight, going into the fourth quarter night, he was plus 11. Through the first 3 quarters of the game, we had outscored our opponents by 11 points when he was on the floor. Now, in the fourth quarter, we get blasted entirely. But that's – and then the other added point to this is Collins suddenly not being guarded by the best defensive player on the floor every night. Like, if he's going to really come off the bench and get a second-tier defensive player, he's going to kill people.
Wear him out. Absolutely, and he's going to beat him off the dribble, get to the basket. He just makes so many things happen. He played, 29 – did he play? Yeah, 29 minutes tonight. Gets up 19 shots, and they're, 12 for 19 there from the field. I don't think we saw a bad shot, from him, and threw in 7 assists there as well. So that efficiency is you can't argue and get mad at that.
Okay, I apologize. I literally am having like a senior moment. Walker Kessler did some things you really liked. We talked about it, I think, on the broadcast. I don't know if you said it here in POSTCAST. That's where my senior moment is.
Yeah.
But what is it you saw out of Walker you really liked
that
tonight?
Second unit, I saw him when they were pushing the ball up the floor and they were playing a little bit faster. Now, the key there is I think, is Walker Kessler because he's running the floor. He gets right into the middle of the floor. Now you get your early offense going, and you can get a pick and roll right in the middle of the floor. And now the defense has to scramble, especially because they're not guarding the man that they would start a ball game guarding. And so now the defense is scrambling. Good ball movement. Colin Sexton can take them off the dribble, get to the basket. I mean, just so many things can happen. And the big thing about that, David, is that when you push the ball up the floor and you're getting into your offense earlier, just think now you got an extra 2 or 3 seconds late in the clock in place you need it in order to get a shot off.
And in fairness, Chet Holmgren was so dominant tonight. He was plus 27 in his 30 minutes, and he was just utterly dominant. 35 points tonight, 14 rebounds. Some of this might be because Chet moved on and off the floor, and that swung the game. We'd have to go back and look at how they match substitution patterns. What did you see out of Chet Holmgren and what this guy's going to do?
I like his game. I mean, he doesn't hurt you anyway, I don't think, out there on the floor. I mean, looking at his size and his weight and all that kind of stuff, and with the players that we had, they couldn't take advantage of posting him up or anything like that. John Collins is 6'9". Only thing you can do is take Chet away from the basket and maybe try to drive around him or shoot the 3-point shot. That didn't happen tonight. But David, aside from all of that, the Jazz defensive transition defense was terrible. And I think that's what beat them tonight. 35-8.
I mean, they allow the most. They get the second most fast breaks in the league behind Toronto. We allow the most in the NBA. That's a bad script.
Well, we saw it tonight, that's for sure.
There's one possession I really loved by Chet Holmgren I wanted to point out because Will Hardy's talked about this a lot with Taylor Hendricks. Colin Sexton got isolated here on the left wing on Chet Holmgren, and Colin couldn't figure out what to do because Chet was backed up far enough with his arm outstretched so that he was impacting his shooting window, but he also was far enough back that Colin was looking like, I'm not going to be able to beat him on a drive. Like, he's that long, and And this is what Will keeps talking about with Taylor Hendricks, that he's doing a bunch of dramatic things defensively, and we saw those tonight. But he basically politely said at the press conference that his on-ball defense is not very good, but he's seeing his recovery defense, his pure athleticism, all this other stuff. But the main thing he's talked about the last 3 press conferences, he's got to understand what his length buys him. His length buys him space, and he's getting too tight on guys, and then he's getting beat. And you saw Holmgren, who with his experience now, or intuitively, has learned that, and it's exactly what Taylor needs to learn. He's not as long, but he's pretty long.
So in other words, take advantage of your length and figure out how to stay in front of guys, and realize that with that length, he can't shoot over the top, or he's afraid to try to shoot over the top anyway, and just cut him off going to the basket. I totally agree with that, David. Nice job on you recognizing something like that with with Holmgren.
All right. Quick thought, and we didn't really see Minnesota at full strength because they didn't have Rudy. We've seen Denver, Minnesota, Oklahoma City in our last 4 games, 3 of our last 4 games. Rank them.
Denver is so efficient. I mean, they are. I don't think there's any. I don't see a downside to their game. I see them, and true enough, the Joker makes a big difference in what goes on out there on the floor because he runs everything. But other than that, they've got the pieces around them to make things happen. I just don't think there's another team in the league that, especially out here in the West, as good as the West is, I think Denver is the team.
The one thing I'll say now, and I'm going to hold to this, we're going to hear a lot of commentators who try to tell you that the Thunder are vulnerable for some reason. They're not. They're not vulnerable. They're the 3rd best offense, 6th best defense. Memphis, when they were young and everyone thought they had no half-court offense. They ranked 22nd in the league in half-court offense. This is the number 1 half-court offense and the number 5 half-court defense. Everything about this Thunder team is made to play well in the playoffs. It's number 1 spot-up shooting team, number 1 pick-and-roll team, number 5 spot-up shooting team. Like, they do it all. They're not a great rebounding team, but I don't think it's that big a deal for them. So I do not think they struggle against super physical teams. They've struggled against the Lakers a little bit. That type of big physical team bothers them, but I do not think they're vulnerable.
So what do you think of their bench? Is their bench strong enough to 7-game series?
I think the Gordon Hayward addition's big because I actually think Gordon Hayward's going to be a virtual starter and Josh Giddey will be the 6th guy, and then you're relying on Isaiah Joe. Like, I'm pretty certain by the time we get to the playoffs, Gordon's going to play more minutes than Giddey is what I'm saying. Okay.
Now, I'll go with that, but I don't know if that is going to – I think Gordon probably coming off the bench and playing those starter minutes rather than starting is probably a great way to go with that.
Yeah, and so then the question is, can Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe, and the Jalen Williams, the non-good, the regular, not superstar Jalen Williams.
This is a good shooting team. And so I think regardless of the combinations they have out there on the floor, well, I don't know.
That bench is probably weaker than some others, but New Orleans is pretty deep. Minnesota's bench is not that much deeper. Denver's bench is not that much deeper. Sacramento's bench is not that much deeper. Frankly, they're on a lot of great deep. One of the deepest benches in the league was the Utah Jazz before the trade deadline. That's why we were winning a lot of games.
Yeah.
Jazz lose tonight to the Thunder, and Chet Holmgren dominates. Our stars tonight, Colin Sexton gets 1. Who's your second one, Ron?
Well, I thought, it was going to be Zuzang. I thought that what he did in that second quarter gave the Jazz a chance and brought the Jazz close anyway to the point where they were only trailing by 1 point. But again, we're running into this every night.
I was going to go either Johnny Juzang or Taylor Hendricks, and just because Taylor Hendricks had 3 blocks,
that'd be a good way.
But he also was in the starting group that got just boat raced both times they're out on the floor. So let's go Johnny Juzang.
Let's do it.
Johnny Juzang and Colin Sexton are your stars of the game tonight. Lacey, mark them up on the board for those guys. Our star list is getting longer by the night. Thanks for tuning in. We now send you the first ever 24/7 national sports channel. You get the Major League Baseball preview if you tune in right now. Hopefully you have a great day. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. And we send you the first ever national 24/7 sports channel, Locked On Sports Today.